Hello and welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Olumide Macaulay. The headlines. Putin confirms that Russia strikes on Ukraine infrastructure, vows to continue to hitting Ukraine's power grid. And as well, coming up on the show today, the Kremlin says Russian forces plan to seize parts of Ukraine that Moscow annexed. And we can also expect U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken, who will be saying the states will be able to call Sweden and Finland NATO allies soon. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has confirmed that Russia was attacking energy infrastructure sites in Ukraine. Putin also accused Ukraine of not supplying water to Russian-controlled Donetsk and said such acts amounted to genocide. He also said that the international uproar over the strikes will not interfere with Russia's combat missions in Ukraine.
Right now, there has been a lot of uproar about our attacks on the energy infrastructure of the neighboring country. Yes, we're doing it. But who started it? Who hit the Crimean Bridge? Who blew up the power lines on the Kursk nuclear power plant? Who isn't supplying water to Donetsk? Not supplying water to a city with more than 1 million people is an act of genocide. No one has ever said a word about it. Total silence. But as soon as we move and do something in response, they scream and shout to the whole universe. This will not interfere with our combat missions. And I want to thank you all, that you and your brothers in arms are doing it in the most worthy way.
Russian President Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, the Russian Foreign Ministry says that the main goal of a proposed safety zone around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine was to stop Ukraine shelling. Both Moscow and Kyiv have accused each other of shelling the plant, Europe's biggest nuclear power station, risking causing a nuclear accident. Now, the plant has come under repeated shelling since Russia seized it shortly after launching what it calls its special military operation in February, prompting the IAEA nuclear safety watchdog to call for a demilitarized safety zone around the plant.
Regarding the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the main goal of the proposed safety zone is a guarantee that the shelling of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant by the Ukraine military forces will end. This shelling could cause a human-made catastrophe with unpredictable consequences, about which we have spoken on many occasions.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he is convinced the United States will be able to call Sweden and Finland NATO allies soon, and says Turkey's concerns about the two nations joining the alliance are being addressed. Blinken, speaking at a press briefing following meetings at the State Department with his Swedish and Finnish counterparts, said that the two nations are already integrating into the work of the alliance. Meanwhile, Finland will consider granting arms export permits to Turkey on a case-by-case basis. Finland's defense minister made this known while visiting Ankara in an effort to bring Turkey around to supporting Finland's and Sweden's NATO membership bids. Now, Finland and Sweden both asked to join the alliance of NATO in May in the wake of the Russia invasion of Ukraine, but their bids require the approval of all 30 NATO member states. Only longtime NATO member Turkey stands opposed to their membership, accusing the Nordic countries of hosting Kurdish militants. The Kremlin has said that its forces are still set on seizing parts of eastern and southern Ukraine that Moscow has claimed as its own. Asked about the goals of Russia's military campaign in Ukraine, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Russia still has to liberate parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia region. Moscow proclaimed it had annexed those 4 regions of Ukraine after holding so-called referendums in September. The votes were rejected as bogus and illegal by Kyiv, the West, a majority of countries at the United Nations. The reactions continue, this time from Russia's foreign ministry, saying that Sweden and Denmark were refusing to include Russian authorities in their investigation of ruptures at the two Nord Stream gas pipelines under the Baltic Sea. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says in a briefing that Denmark and Sweden are afraid to let Russia in on the investigation. European governments suspect the ruptures of the pipelines used to bring gas direct from Russia to Germany were caused by gross sabotage. Meanwhile, Ukraine's foreign minister says a suspicious or threatening package sent to Ukrainian diplomatic missions all had the same sender address, a Tesla leadership in Germany. Dmytro Kuleba added that 31 Ukrainian embassies and consulates in 15 countries received those packages. He says they were sent from post offices with no surveillance, and senders took care to hide their identity. Now, security was boosted after the first of the packages was sent last week. Ukraine said at the time that bloody packages containing animal eyes had been sent to 8 embassies in Europe, but more have been affected since. The Tesla leadership in question is in the town of Sindelfingen in southwestern Germany. However, the Associated Press quoted Spanish officials as saying the packages received there were sent from inside Spain, a fact that appears to be born out of a photo of one of them. Iran has announced the first execution of a protester convicted over the recent anti-government unrest. According to state media, Mohsen Shikari was hanged on Thursday morning after being found guilty by Revolutionary Court of what they call Moharbi, that is enmity against God. He was accused of being a rioter who blocked the main road in Tehran in September and wounded a member of the paramilitary force with a machete. An activist said he was convicted after a short trial without no due process. The judiciary's Mizan news agency said on the 1st of November, the court found Shikari guilty of fighting and drawing a weapon with the intention of killing, causing terror, and disturbing the order and security of society, and convicted him of enmity against God. He appealed against the verdict, but it was upheld by the Supreme Court. On the 20th of November, so far, the judiciary has announced that at least 11 other people have been sentenced to death by revolutionary courts on the charges of enmity against God or corruption on earth in connection with the protests. Now, in search of cleaner countries, or rather a cleaner country air, a Polish family swapped the busy city streets of Krakow for this, the village of Alpini, nestled in the Carpathian foothills. The Trakuks family made the leap back in 2018. With the war in Ukraine and the cutting off of Russian and gas supplies, Julia Trakuk's quest to bring her 3 children up in a less polluted environment is proving harder than she thought. Local authorities have postponed a ban on the dirtiest stoves for heating, and last month, air pollution in the village exceeded the norms by 4-fold. Poland has been one of the most polluted countries in Europe for years. According to an organization that monitors pollution early, Poland's government has tried to clamp down on the burning of dirty fuel in homes. But those efforts were hampered when in April, Russian gas was cut off over a payment dispute. Ukrainian servicemen have removed ammunition from former Russian positions in retaking Mykolaiv region villages. The ammunition that can be used is being given to the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the National Guard of Ukraine. Not only mines and ammunition dumps are in focus of Ukrainian servicemen, the mines and unexploded ammunition pose danger not only to humans, but also to roaming cattle that was left behind, freed by the local residents that fled the war. Now, local social media channels in the Russian-occupied city of Berdyansk reported loud explosions and a fire there on Thursday morning. Russian-appointed officials denied any such attack. Berdyansk is a city and a port close to the Sea of Azov in Ukraine's southern coast and has been occupied by Russian forces since the early days of the conflict. Its port has previously been targeted by Ukrainian forces. The explosions were confirmed by Victoria Galitsinia, the Ukrainian-appointed head of the city's military administration, and Petro, an advisor to the mayor of Mariupol. Neither official is in Donetsk, however. Galitsinia says the explosions had occurred at a Russian-held airfield just north of the city. Now, announcing that, judging by what was being reported locally, something very big detonated, according to officials, adding that the sound of the explosion has been heard in nearby villages. Now we'll turn our attention to the reactions concerning sports on. Before we go to that, we're going to be speaking to our guest, Ambassador Joseph Ayalogu, the former Nigerian ambassador to Switzerland and the United Nations in Geneva. Thank you for joining us on Russian invasion.
Thank you.
Firstly, we hear this confirmation, which was not in any way being contested, however, that Russia was responsible for the hitting of the energy grid of Ukraine. What do you make of this postulation from Vladimir Putin, saying up front that, yes, we're the ones that did it? What are you going to do about it?
Well, sorry, I think that's the style of impunity that started the war and has pervaded, defined the course of the war. So what else can one say? It's unfortunate, though.
Okay. And do you think that the reactions from the U.S. Secretary of State concerning the NATO bid of Sweden and Finland is also stoking the flames of the war, knowing that this was the very reason that one of the major reasons that Putin was given that Ukraine should not be allowed to join NATO. And here other nations as well are jumping on the bandwagon.
Well, the Ukraine situation is quite complex. Ukraine insists that it has a right to be where it wants to be, to take its sovereign decisions. Russia says it cannot, which is already an infringement of sovereignty and territorial integrity. So countries are arranged around the two combatants. The war in Ukraine is seen as affecting both Europe and the whole world globally in various ways. So it's almost difficult for the other European countries to stand by and wait for Putin to decide when to stop. So at the end of the day, it's really difficult to say, oh, somebody is stoking it or not, because the issues that led to it are quite straightforward. You don't go and invade other countries because you don't like the association they keep. So it's a problem.
Ambassador, but knowing that countries like France are asking that the mediation continue and that both countries return to the mediation table, how does this even help when you know that you're obviously is going to be provocative to Russia, who are being obstinate as far as this is concerned? Now, this NATO membership bid of these other countries seems to be daring them to do whatever they may.
Well, is it not possible that it is the Russian obstinacy that it's leading to an attempt to rush or even ensure that Ukraine becomes part of NATO or part of EU or something like that? So it's possible that we couldn't even have been coming to this length of the discussion, the level of discussion, if there hadn't been the invasion. So perhaps to make progress, Russia would accept that in the first place, that Ukraine has a right to take its own internal decisions, and thereafter, there are some understandings can then be reached on taking cognizance of Russia's concern about proximity with a NATO country or otherwise. But without Russia or Putin deciding in ab initio or in principle to withdraw his troops from attacking or invading Ukraine, there is a difficulty. There is a very serious difficulty. That's how I see it.
And Ambassador, could you also share with us your insights as far as this is concerned? Being a former ambassador to Switzerland and the United Nations, you have a perspective on how these issues are discussed at that highest level. Are you pleased with the way the United Nations has handled it as far as preventing this war is concerned and trying to bring it to an end? Or you think things could have been done differently?
Well, I know that United Nations, in spite of our expectations, has its own difficulty, has its own limitations. And we find a situation where it can't even agree on much without the buy-in of the Security Council. And one of the key combatants has veto power. So we are just seeing an exposition of the weakness, the underlying weakness of the United Nations. They are doing what they can do with regard to humanitarian issues surrounding this war. The Secretary General has helped in negotiating a wheat deal and all that. But, a lot more needs to be done. And United Nations, as always, have always been hard, difficult, would have always found it difficult to impose what could actually be the proper decisions when it comes to wars like this. So that is actually the hard fact, the real truth of the matter.
Where, therefore, Ambassador, do you think reprieve can come from as far as those who have influence on Putin and countries maybe such as France, maybe China, maybe allies of Putin who will, or are we just seeing a situation where everybody's hands are tied?
Well, historically, from how we've watched wars start, go, proceed, and then end. Either the two parties, combatants get tired, or some internal situations cause one of the combatants to say, this is enough, I've had enough, or I can't continue. So we probably would see this invasion continue for quite some time till it burns itself out. That is a pessimistic view of it, but I would say almost realistic view too, because the friends of Russia or people you expect to influence Putin's decision, like France, like China, they're not able to do that. Otherwise, they would have made some impact now up to this point, but they have not. So the carnage, the tension continues. So perhaps the only way out is that the Ukraine would fight this war as best as it can and do as much damage and make progress in repelling Russia and tire Russia, so that it will begin to see, perhaps with internal pressures within Russia, the Putin will begin to see that there is no need for this war in the first place and begin to withdraw. So I am thinking that might be one of the scenarios we should be looking at or expecting.
Therefore, Ambassador, by the way, some countries are falling rather silent, such as Israel, who have been trying to tread a middle path so as to be able to speak to both sides. What do you think of Israel's participation as far as mediation is concerned? But that means that you are given, that means that you're not confident, or what is your opinion as far as Ukraine being able to repel this attack? It's not realistic in your view. Are you saying that Ukraine can stop Russia in its tracks and actually repel them?
Well, we are a lot of watchers are hoping that it does, because that seems to be the only way to convince Putin to come to terms or to have an end to this war. One hopes that, Ukraine might be. We know it's a hard slog. I mean, the balance of power is actually very much against them. But what else can they do? That is it. So it's very important thing. What I see as very important here is that for whatever reason, either pressure from outside, from big powers, or from internal forces, that Putin decides one day, just as he started this war, to say, it's enough, I'm pulling out. Simple, that's the only way, that's the only solution.
Ambassador Joseph Ayologu, former Nigerian ambassador to Switzerland and the United Nations in Geneva, thank you for coming on Russian invasion, our special coverage.
Yeah, thank you.
You're watching our special coverage of Russian invasion of Ukraine. After the break, the number of oil tankers waiting at Bosphorus rises by 5, according to the Turkish agency. Please stay with us. Welcome back to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We pick up where we left off. Now, the Ukrainian military says settlements in eastern Donetsk region and the northeastern in Kyiv region have come under heavy Russian fire, with more than 20 attacks from Russian multiple rocket launchers. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine say Russian forces were holding their lines along the border between Kyiv and Luhansk region and have even shelled nearly a dozen settlements in the course of the day. The head of Kyiv region military administration told Ukrainian television that in northern parts of Kyiv, towns recently taken back by Ukrainian forces near the Russian border were constantly being shelled, including in Vovchansk. Further south, the Donetsk front lines continue to see heavy Russia shelling in nearly 20 areas. According to the military, especially around Bakhmut and Avdiivka, battles in the region have become a war of attrition involving mortars, tank fire, artillery and explosives dropped from drones. Much of the countryside pockmarked with craters. Neither side has taken any meaningful territory in several months along that part of the front line. Now we'll be speaking to a security expert, Mr. Oladende Ario, in the course of the program as it continues. You're welcome to our special coverage.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us. Now, concerning the nuclear power plant, where the Russian Foreign Ministry has says that they want to stop Ukraine from shelling that area, but that the main goal of that's the main goal of the proposed safety zone, and it is in Russian hands. And there is contention about who is shelling the plant in the first place. What does this do for the war?
It's a bad position because the reactors are exposed. So the likelihood of heavy radiation exists. And what that means is that human beings, animals, and plants in the neighborhood, they stand to either die instantly or die slowly from radiation effects. And if there's any accidental misfire, because they are firing missiles from that place, it will be something else for the entire world. Because it will mean releasing atomic bomb into the space, the global space, which of course they cannot even control themselves. This for me, it's high-handedness on the part of Russia. You know what can happen, if anything should go wrong in that place. It's enough that you have taken over the place. Why do you have to now go and plant a missile firing facility within the place? It makes it severally unsafe. Which may now change the dimension of the entire invasion completely beyond anybody's imagination or projection. So unfortunately, the world has failed Ukraine. When I mean the world, I mean virtually all the countries of the world, whether in UN or not in UN. This has been allowed to last for too long. It has gone on for too long.
When you say the world has failed Ukraine, what more could they have done? In what aspects do you think that decisions could have been taken?
Yes. There were so many. At the hunger, we thought they would discuss this, but it didn't happen, even by the sidelines. Then they had the UN Security Council meeting. It didn't also happen. The last meeting they had, another meeting, APEC meeting in Bangkok, in Thailand, it didn't come up. I don't think it should be a big deal for some heads of nations to assemble and begin to make overtures to Putin, to let him realize that what they're doing is a genocide. Unfortunately,
you don't think what the European Commission is doing
is not enough?
And the sanctions that are being
Even
placed?
Britain just announced fresh sanctions. America is planning to, impose more sanctions. But the question is, people are still being killed every day. Facilities are being destroyed. And at the end of the day, the economy and the well-being of average Ukrainian is made to look very hopeless. Now, they no longer have power in so many places. And don't forget that winter is approaching, so they won't have heat. Some don't even have water already. In a situation where they have to begin to give them generators in communities to charge their phone so they could still communicate. It's uncalled for. Let's say there was an issue because I read a report yesterday where Putin said there was a coup that moved out Russian-prone leadership from Ukraine in 2014 or something, and that was when this thing started. Okay? The question is, how can I come and dictate who heads China's TV, for instance? Okay? It's an entity on its own. Or me, I should be influence the president of the Benin Republic. It's a needless overture, and it shouldn't have gone that far. Unfortunately, humanity has failed Ukraine. I'm telling you, all the body counts that they are giving us, they are speculative. Nobody can go under the debris and be looking for human bodies.
When you say that humanity has failed Ukraine, given the nature of war, when one side is hell-bent on prosecuting the war, and there are other sides that don't want that to happen.
I would not call it a war, please. It's not a war.
What would you call it then?
Invasion.
Okay, fine. It's an invasion.
Yeah, because they are not. It's not like the amphitheater of the war. It's Ukraine. They're not bombing Russia.
Ukraine is that's
a hard fact.
My point is for you to blame the other nations when Russia is taking this position. What more, in practical terms, do you think could have been done? There's a preventive part that critics say that could have been done better. But prevention, that part that horse has left the stable. The ship has sailed. Yeah. So, but as far as these countries now that want the war to end is concerned, nobody wants a third world war. How are you going to force someone like Putin to step back?
We won't use the word force. We can talk about persuasion. Okay.
Okay.
It can be persuaded.
Which countries do you think will be able to persuade Putin?
If they cannot reach out to Putin, China and India, including Iran, they are his backers. Okay? Why don't they reach out to heads of those nations and let them realize that in this day and age, nobody needs such an annihilation. Because at the end of the day, Ukraine will remain. Maybe the areas that Russia has taken, they will go with Russia, whether they will go or not. But that place, there will still be a nation called Ukraine with so much to tackle. Where are the resources? Globally, we are facing economic recession and inflation here and there. Things are not smooth anywhere. And here is the same country that has been responsible largely for providing so much food for the entire world. You know, when this thing started, Nigeria got caught up in the web of not having wheat, and the cost of bread and cake went up until they had to negotiate. They now allowed some shipments to leave through the Black Sea port. But when you look at the global picture, the universal consequences, you will see that the world needs to move a bit faster. And I was there at the Pope. We got emotional about it as well. He was praying, and then he practically shed tears. So I still think they should create as many platforms as possible, political, religious, economic, to reach out to Putin and his allies, okay? Whereby they will start thinking of how to terminate the war. As it is, it's going to, by February 23rd or 24th next year, it will be 1 year. And 1 year of disaster, 1 year of mass murder, 1 year,
What concessions do you think then that Ukraine can make? Because this war was predicated on certain demands that Russia had, including Ukraine not joining NATO, including the suppression of pro-Russian elements in Ukraine, according to Russia. So where do you think a fine line can be maybe crossed?
You see, it's like if I threaten to snatch your wife, okay, and then you now go after me without me actually chasing her or anything. They've not joined NATO. There could have been alliances with organizations with NATO or even with NATO, but they have not joined NATO, for crying out loud. And even if they choose to join NATO, I can understand the international politics about it, okay, and the security implications for Russia, and the other countries. But at the same time, I don't still see decapitation as a solution to a headache, which is what has happened in this situation. Okay? Then there are issues within Russia politics that is generating opposition against Russia. And those who are in Ukraine doing that, there is little or nothing Ukraine can do to suppress them. They're not firing arms at Russia. They're only talking. And I don't think, like we are talking here now, I'm pro-Ukraine, take it or leave it. So am I guilty of any misdemeanor? No. I'm concerned more with humanity and the consequence of the invasion. And it will take a very long time to rebuild Ukraine, if that must be taken into cognizance.
I'll repeat what you just said. Decapitation is not the solution to a headache.
To a headache,
okay.
No.
That's a very visceral.
Yorubas will say, "Ori mi beki isho gori fifo."
It means the same thing.
Yeah, man.
That's a very visceral way of putting it. But that in mind, now that Putin came out to say, as we just saw at the start of the program, that Russia is responsible, there was never any question as to who else will be responsible except you're living on the moon, as far as the attacking of energy infrastructure of Ukraine is concerned. What do you think he's trying to do with that admission?
Of course.
Apart from stating the obvious.
He's just technically trying to justify what the entire, or what some of us see as evil. Okay? That's, you're just trying to explain the way whereby, there's been threats that it will end up at the ICC when all these things are over. So he probably foresaw, the need for him to try and make himself look good. Hence that statement. Yesterday alone, they fired 86 missiles into a part of Russia, not far from, I've forgotten the name of that town. And at the end of the day, they said they saw 3 people there, 2 there, 5, 8 there. And like I said, body count during wars, then they always, you see, because who goes under the rubbles to go and start bringing out human beings? And some missiles are so powerful that when they hit any human being, the person melts. So for the sake of humanity, let the Pope go and meet whoever they have to meet, because he has shown interest now and let other political leaders also show interest. Now, America is going to sanction Nicaragua, Mali, and Iran, and a few other countries that have been found to collaborate with Russia. Are we now not creating possibility of a third world war? So the earlier this is nipped in the bud, the best for all of us. So we can mind or take care of our individual business as nations.
Third World War, God forbid. That's where we should leave it with you. Thank you so much for making out the time to come be with us on the program today and sharing with us your insight on the issues.
Thank you for having me.
You're watching our special coverage of Russian invasion of Ukraine. After the break, Vladimir Zelensky becomes Time Magazine's 2022 Person of the Year. Please stay with us. Welcome back to our special coverage of Russian invasion. Now, the number of oil tankers waiting in the Black Sea to cross Istanbul's Bosphorus Strait on the way to the Mediterranean rose by 5 to 16 yesterday, a shipping agency has confirmed, amidst talks between Western and Turkish officials on steps to resolve the tanker queues there. Oil tankers, including Green Trader and Advantage Angel, those are their names, remained at anchorage off the coast of Istanbul on Thursday. A British Treasury official says those talks were happening after the G7 and European Union rolled out new restrictions on December the 5th aimed at Russian oil exports. The G7 group of countries, the European Union and Australia have agreed to bar shipping service providers like insurers from helping export Russian oil, unless it's sold at an enforced low price or cap to deprive Moscow of wartime revenue. But a separate Turkish measure enforced since the start of the month has caused a logjam, requiring vessels to provide proof they have insurance covering the duration of their transit through the Bosphorus Strait or when called at Turkish ports. The Tribeca shipping agency named 5 new tankers longer than 200 meters waiting north of the Bosphorus Strait to cross southbound towards the Mediterranean Sea. In addition to the 11 named a day earlier, it said no ships were scheduled to cross. Now, there's a business dimension to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Our business correspondent, Laddie Williams, is in studio with me to furnish us with more details.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Laddie.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, let's begin where I'm thinking China has been very busy in spite of having their hands full with COVID and the reactions of their countrymen to that issue and others as well. It appears they are now grabbing the Russian car market share after the Western rivals have departed.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's that about?
We saw, big brands like Renault, Mercedes, all, leave Russia when they invaded Ukraine. And we've seen how that has impacted, the auto industry in Russia. We've seen, car production slumped about 61%, the country. And with the sanctions, they've not been able to get the inputs, that they need, for car production, in Russia. So we've seen, China, starting to fill that void. We've seen their car brands like Geely and Chery and Haval all, taking, big shares in the Russian auto industry, right now. So we've seen they've gone up about 31%, the market share right now of China car brands in Russia.
Why haven't the Japanese done that? Or it has to be Russian allies that have that
It's the friendly, nations. And obviously we know China is one of the most friendly, right now to Russia. And obviously we have, India too. But, we're seeing that share, that market share, with China brands in their auto industry actually rising. It's going higher. Earlier in the year, it was about 8,325 units sold. That's talking about cars, Chinese cars. But now we're seeing about 16,000 in November. So we've seen the number double. And obviously it's looking like it's going to keep rising going forward because the sanctions are still there. The war is still on. And we're also getting a lot of imports, car part imports, from China into Russia. That has also risen. So this data is showing us that, China is taking a big position right now in the auto industry, and they're expecting it to get as high as 40% going into 2023.
Isn't that profiteering off the war, of a war?
Well, some might call it profiteering, but at the end of the day, if you have an ally, if you have a friendly nation that's willing to fill the positions of the Western countries that have left, then I might as well take that deal. But, it remains to be seen how that relationship goes on, going forward, because there are also risk of secondary sanctions. So we'll see how 2023 is definitely going to be an interesting year, for the friendly nations to Russia and obviously the unfriendly.
Indeed. I'm told we have to leave it there for reasons of time. But Laddie, thank you so much.
No problem.
In a moment after the show,
Right.
Business Morning, we'd like our viewers to stay tuned for that.
Exactly.
Laddie Williams will be
Unpacking all of that.
taking center stage again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, we'll turn our attention to sports as far as this is concerned. We have sportsmen and women of Ukrainian extraction and tournaments that in one way or the other are being impacted by this war in Ukraine. And we begin with Wimbledon, who are primed to lift the ban on Russian and Belarusian players in the wake of British tennis being threatened with expulsion by the Association of Tennis Professionals, ATP, and the Women's Tennis Association, WTA. Now, Wimbledon was stripped of its rankings points in retaliation for its ban, while WTA and ATP have since imposed fines totaling around $2 million on the UK tennis authorities. The governing body has also been warned it could lose its membership if a similar decision is made next year. Not only tennis, now chess. The World Chess Federation has granted Russian and Belarusian chess players the right to take part in international tournaments under the organization's neutral flag. The president of the association says that the federation will not change the rules in regard to players' participation in global tournaments following demands on behalf of Russian chess grandmaster Sergei Karjakin. Karjakin stated in November he will not be competing at the 2022 World Rapid and Blitz Championships in Kazakhstan on December the 25th or the 31st if he was not allowed to play under the national flag of Russia. Karjakin is the winner of the Chess World Cup in 2015. He's also the world champion in rapid chess in 2012 and the Blitz in 2016. Now, who exactly is Viktor Bout, the Russian arms dealer the U.S. swapped for imprisoned basketball star Brittany Griner? The 55-year-old has been dubbed the Merchant of Death, as well as the Sanctions Buster, for his ability to get around arms embargoes. For almost 2 decades, Bout became the world's most notorious arms dealer, selling weapons to rogue states, rebel groups, and murderous warlords in Africa, Asia, and South America. His notoriety even inspired a Hollywood film starring Nicolas Cage. Little is known about Bout's original origin, but biographies generally agree he was born in 1967 in Dushanbe, then the capital of the Soviet Tajikistan. He's a gifted linguist. He later used his reported command of the English language, French, Portuguese, Arabic, and Persian to build his international arms empire. A stint in the Soviet army followed, where he served as a military translator, including in Angola, a country that would later become central to his business. His big breakthrough came in the days after the collapse of the communist bloc, when he cashed in on a sudden glut of discarded Soviet-era weaponry. Now, in 2007, Douglas Farrar and Stephen Braun wrote a biography entitled Merchant of Death, Guns, Planes, and the Man Who Makes War Possible. It reported the following details of his shadowy trade. Bout interwove his arms trafficking empire with a seemingly innocuous logistics business. He appeared to have little in the way of firm ideology, placing business above politics. His clients included rebel groups and militia from Congo to Angola and Liberia. In Afghanistan, he sold guns to Islamist Taliban insurgents and their foes in the pro-Western Northern Alliance. So he played both sides. The end only came in 2008 after an elaborate sting operation by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration in Bangkok. There, Victor Bout was arrested by Thai police. After 2 years of diplomatic wrangling, he was extradited to the U.S., where he faced a raft of charges, including conspiracy to support terrorists, conspiracy to kill Americans, and money laundering. In 2012, he was convicted and sentenced by a court, in Manhattan to 25 years in prison. The Russian state has been keen to get him back ever since. And finally today, Time magazine has named Vladimir Zelensky president of Ukraine as the 2022 Person of the Year. Now, the award goes to an event or person deemed to have had the most influence on global events over the past 12 months. Other finalists have included protesters in Iran, China's leader Xi Jinping, and the U.S. Supreme Court. The magazine's editor says the decision was the most clear-cut in memory. He added that the spirit of Ukraine referred to Ukrainians around the world, including many who fought behind the scenes. This includes people like Ivenko Klopotenko, a chef who provided thousands of free meals to Ukrainians, and a medic, Yulia Payevaska, who was captured, then released after 3 months in Russian captivity. The magazine also says Mr. Zelensky had inspired Ukrainians and was recognized internationally for his courage in resisting the Russian invasion. Zelensky's success as a wartime leader has relied on the fact that courage is contagious, it says. British trauma surgeon David Nutt, who went into Ukraine to help those injured in the war, is one of several others who feature on the magazine's cover. Women in Ukraine were Time's 2022 Heroes of the Year, and the K-pop band Blackpink were recognized as Time's Entertainer of the Year. American baseballer Aaron Judge also received an honor. But at the end of the day, the Person of the Year, Time magazine, President Vladimir Zelensky. And that's where we leave it for today's edition for our special coverage of Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Do have a great weekend.